I think a great presentation, wonderful, visualized as well. Gives us a great outlook into the future, how difficult that is. Imagine what we think about as flood managers and scientists. We think about the development of infrastructure for the next 150 or 100 or maybe 200 years. We are developing those structures, but in this world, as he just showed us, do we really know what the world looks around those structures in 50 or 100 years from now? Thank you very much for that. Ruud also emphasized already the importance of the development of IT technology in this future. Also important in our science and research and in our technologies. Our next speaker will continue on that topic and will go dig a little deeper in it as well. I guess Djeevan Schiferli from IBM will talk to us. I don't think I need to introduce IBM. Maybe a little introduction on Djeevan, although many of you probably already know him. He has been around in the water sector and in the business of green development in the Netherlands for quite a number of years now, really bringing IBM to the scene and helping us to develop our thinking in growing to the idea of smart world and smart cities, smart technologies. He was one of the driving forces behind the FloodControl2100. He will continue to be a driving force in the next generation development called the Digital Delta here in the Netherlands. And I'm looking forward to his presentation about our smart future, about smart planets and smart cities. Djeevan, floor is yours.
Dankjewel. Deze werkt. I have a challenge because I brought a corrupted presentation of 0 kilobytes. So this is a backup for another session. And what I always hate is if people skip a lot of slides to go to the right one, but this one is too long for the 10 minutes that I have. So I do have to skip. I apologize. It's not so very smart. You know, computers are always right, so it's my mistake. But let me go. So I apologize. Yeah. And if you're very quick, you can actually read all this. So this is actually the part that I wanted to talk to you about. It's not the far out future. Actually, the computers already exist that outsmart human beings. It's called Watson. And Watson can answer in natural language any question you fire away at it. Look it up on YouTube. You get an excellent presentation. And the key thing about Watson is it's in unstructured information. It's PDF files, it's handwritten notes that it's fed. There's no database structure anymore. It's all about unstructured and lots of data. Look that up. That's IT for the future. This is actually what is happening in Rio de Janeiro, and as an example to what the future might be for flood management, flood control. So a lot of things happening in Rio de Janeiro. They got the Olympics coming up. They got the World Soccer coming up. They have had some major events already. That always coincides with larger investments they're attracting investments from all over the world. And this is what happened in Rio in 2010. They had a very bad year with the weather, extreme weather events, mudslides, flash flooding. 15,000 people lost their homes, damages. And the insights to the mayor at that time was that they didn't have the relevant information to do a coordinated response to the events, in this case, floods. And the reason for that was that there were different departments, siloed organizations, each with their own IT, information systems, different models, different technologies, anything you can imagine. The emergency roles were not very well defined, so it was not only a data problem, but also a roles and responsibility problem. And as a result, decision making was slow and everything was reactive. And what came out of it is the concept of a city operations center. Now we have operation centers in the world for traffic management, for energy, for floods, but there isn't a single operation center where all this is integrated. And that was the vision of Rio de Janeiro, also related to facilitating the Olympics. So this is what they did. They created a new building. The mayor reallocated 30 different departments of the city to one physical building. They could do that. It was the time to do it over there. If you have an existing working situation, it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to them. They appointed a chief city operations officer, which, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, who is second to the mayor in case there's an emergency. So there's differences in how other countries deal with it. So the part of IBM here and its partners was to basically to integrate the IT. That was the thing that IBM did. All the IT of all 30 different departments. You can imagine that's quite a challenge for us. And we work with some partners in adding state-of-the-art flood modeling, weather forecasting, creating the crisis management plans, the roles and responsibilities. And actually, the basis for this was laid 3 years ago in Rotterdam, when we engaged out of the flood control project with Rotterdam on what is your future on dealing with situations in this area, with large events, with drought, with flooding risk, flood risk. And the 3 scenarios that we worked out with the Rotterdam people over here were actually part and are now realized in Rio. But it doesn't stop there. So, some nice buildings. You can see that it's really new, and they're very enthusiastic about it. I'll skip this part. I'll skip this part because I'd like to focus on this since I have 10 minutes. So this is just an example of what they're now able to do, and extrapolate in your own mind, in your own experience, what it could mean to you. So they got the dashboarding to do high-resolution weather forecasting on a 1 kilometer grid in the city. And that includes the topography of that area, so hills, how the things run off. And one of the problems they often have is that the rain tends to go to the lowest, no, that's everywhere in the world except in the Netherlands, we pump it out. But rain actually goes to the lowest point, and that's often where the traffic jams are. So many of the casualties were in those areas because floods come, people are in the car in a traffic jam, they drown. So they do the high resolution weather forecasting for the next 6 hours. After that it becomes less dependable. And the system is able, and that's the intelligence behind it, the system is able to look up in other sources of information that by itself is not necessarily a problem, but the drainages and the sewers in a particular area, there's a report that they are clogged up. And that's correlation they're now able to make. Each by itself is not a problem, but the two together increase the flood risk. So that generates the warning. That goes to the city operations center. They get an advice, and that advice is sent out to everybody who is interested in that signal. So it's not only the flood modelers who go through with their manuals to send it to the mayor, to whatever. The information becomes available to everybody. So in this case, they can the bus organization gets the warning and can take the decision to reroute the buses in the area that's at risk. At the same time, they can look up in the work orders system, and they see that that particular drainage or sewer is up for maintenance 2 weeks from now, and they can reprioritize that maintenance immediately, on the fly. And they do that by looking at all the crews available. So all the garbage trucks, all the maintenance crews of all these staff are equipped with GPS transponders as part of the project. They know what kind of skills and expertise and technology is available on each service truck. And mathematically they optimize which one is the closest to redirect to take on that work order. And this part of the project was already done in the District of Washington, and that resulted in a 20% lower fuel cost for that department in Washington, just by optimization of the available maintenance crews, of the direction where they need to go. So the crew solves the problem, clears out the sewer or the drains. Everybody is updated on the status immediately. So it's not dependent on people anymore, but it's the information becomes available to everybody who is interested. They remove the drain blockage, and eventually everybody understands that the problem has gone away. Buses can take their original route again. And this is the kind of intelligence that then becomes available. So from an IT perspective, it's a huge challenge to get them all to work on the same system. But it now becomes available to develop your specific technologies, or if you're in a specific domain, think I saw Hansje Brinker over here doing satellite imaging. All the information sources now become available to add new solutions to it. And that's exactly what we envisioned with FloodControl2100 at the time. Can we come to a situation where all these things become components that you can add together with local expertise and make up an end-to-end solution? Well, there was an exercise, of course. You need to do that. Is the system actually working? There was in November last year, 15-hour exercise. Basically, they showed that it is possible to take a city, which is a siloed organization, like many others in the world, by the way, and turn it into a flat organization, where everybody has the same insight and the same information and can execute on it. And that's delivering all kinds of cost savings to that particular city. Final one, this is what happened in January this year. There was a collapse of a large building. It took another one with it, and there was panic in the city. So the city operation, this was the true test to the whole thing. Is it just nice to have, or is it actually, does it actually work? Within 5 minutes, the operation center was into action. So they only come into action if there's a crisis situation. And in parallel, they were able to do these things here. So the fire department was alerted. Gas and electricity were shut down. So normally that was done on basis if somebody gets a phone call from somebody says, I smell gas, let's close off the thing. So that was all done automatically. The subway were closed down. Ambulances were dispatched. Hospitals were warned. Heavy equipment sent in. So that saved them hours, maybe even days, to do a coordinated response. Now that's nice that you have a system where you can deal with an emergency. But what we have been getting back in the flood control program for 5 years is that the ones who are responsible for crisis management say that we don't need a system for crisis. We need a system that's operational on a daily basis, that can scale up very fast if there's a crisis. A lesson learned in Katrina. So a less crisis situation was the carnival. Normally 18 different agencies in Rio work besides each other but not together in organizing this. So assigned time slots, security, cleaning, street control, and they're now able to do that much more efficient. That increases the respect and how they value the city operations people. And it results in lower cost, and that's basically where the public sector is always interested in. Reduce cost. We want to do more, but get us at a lower cost. So that's what I wanted to tell you on the near future for flood management, water management in these kind of settings. You can see it extends into other areas like traffic and energy and things like that. But to get there is still a major step. It's not easy. So Watson is nice for the next 10 years, but this is for the next 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Djeevan. Nice continuation on the first speaker and also bringing it a little more back to our field of operation, our experience and knowledge, and also a little bit more the near future. So I hope that was interesting for you and inspiring for our discussion. We'll have a couple of little movies, and I think it's maybe a nice idea to have some discussion and every now and then have one of those movies whenever we feel we need some more inspiration, or whenever we think we want to hear about one of those cities. But just maybe to open it up, just reflecting on the previous the two speakers that we just had. Just in general, who has a question or a remark to make, or who was very much inspired by something? And maybe Jos, could you help me to walk around with the microphone, or can we work without microphone? Do you think?
I just comment was I was struck by the difference in the first speaker said that in the far future we can work anywhere, but we don't have to be together, and we're connected by technology. And what Djeevan said was the first thing that they did in Rio was build a big building where everybody could be together. So it was sort of stressing the importance that it really often comes down to people and people being able to communicate well. You also, I think you said, it's not always technology, but you have the organizations play a big role, and these organizations and mandates what people are supposed to do. And that's equally as important as technology. So I thought there was some contrast there, which was interesting.
Very interesting observation. Which of you two would like to reflect to that?
Well, we have a lot of experience also in the bank where I work out. This is smart working. And for smart working, you can do a lot of things, especially for knowledge workers. You can really do a lot of things themselves and wherever they want, also at home. But still, you need 1 or 2 days a week to come together to coordinate, to do things together. So some offices, some buildings, some things still will be necessary always, but it's not as it was in at this moment, as it was in the near past. So it will change in the future, I think. So it will not be that there are no offices at all, but there will be much less offices and also less factories and so on.
Thanks. Djeevan, any reflection to that?
It is a very good point, and you know my statement. So part of the flood control, in all the discussions, it was clear that it's nice to have a central control room, but you still need to get the people to the control room. And what happens if there's a flood or a fire or whatever, that might not be possible. So we're much more a believer of providing the solutions to wherever you are in the world. That's why I said for Rio it makes sense, because they had to do it anyway, relocate stuff. And the other one is that do watch some of the movies on Watson, because Watson is mind-boggling. I find it scary, because it's really the point where computers become smarter than men. But the whole purpose is that behind Watson is the fact that there's so much information, nobody can deal with it anymore. So it's positioned as technology that can read anything, any manual, any handwritten note, whatever, but it provides you with the information and you make a decision on what to do with it. But it stays technology, so there will always be others who think, well, let's do it smarter, and let the technology be under control. That's the good and bad about technology, and we as mankind have to solve that. But we're strong believers in it doesn't make sense to have one physical building. Do it with IT remote.
Okay, thank you. Interesting other topic that Djeevan addressed now was this topic of the tremendous amount of data. And also here in our conference you hear a lot of discussions about monitoring and data collection and validation and modeling and all kind of database systems that organize and structure data and then find ways for us to distill the right information out of it for our models or for our theories. Now Djeevan also said, and I think it was also in your presentation, very soon we'll reach a point that the amount of data will be so tremendous, there's no way it will make sense to add more data to that, or it will be possible for you just to structurize and manage that. In our near future we will have to find ways to just get out the right information out of unstructured and unlimited amounts of data. Where is this connected now to our work here, and what does it mean for let's say very complex flood control systems in very complex cities that we would like to manage? Who has an idea about that, an opinion or a question? Maybe I didn't explain it well, so I ask you to help me.
Shoot. Yeah, so just an example here. I see some faces from people here who generate a lot of data or know how to deal with it. It just gets worse. We were in a meeting this morning, and there was somebody from a satellite imaging company who had a discussion that he could not talk on a particular project because the the person in charge from the public sector wasn't very comfortable with the fact that they had more information than he had. But that's it. So the fact is, there's so much data, anybody will have access, and some people will come to a conclusion on what it actually means. Could be the wrong conclusion, but it will happen, and you have to deal with it if you're an official, and it's your responsibility. The other thing is, if you there's still people going to universities to learn how to administer a database, how to create structured data. In 2015, 80% of all the data will be unstructured. It will be Twitter, it will be video, it will be... so we saw some solutions from how you can get data out of camera images, if you like, and use them for immediate visualizing of if there is actually a flood happening, which is different from predicting. And the sensor only gives you a reading yes or no, but actually see it flow through the streets. So it's a different kind of skill that you will need in order to deal with it. If you look at Watson, it doesn't have a database anymore. It has 14 terabytes of unstructured data. And it's not a matter of writing a query. You have to look up that database cell and that row and get out the information and compare it to this. No, it's a matter of how do you get data out of Twitter. That's different. It's always there. It doesn't make sense to store it because it's too much. But how do you recognize in all these streams that something is happening, and then to have some human beings on it with their specialized tools and say, okay, so this is what is happening. So technology is going so fast, and what we're seeing is that we're not coping with it. Our societal structures are too slow, and we're being outpaced by technology, and things will happen. But what does it mean to, for instance, flood intelligence? So I would say, let's shift a little bit away from how we've been doing things and move much more into this new space, because that's where the future will be. If we like to earn money, things like that.
Okay, thanks, Djeevan. Short reflection from John?
No reflection. But I noticed another thing. This is scary what you're telling. But both in the stories of both Ruud and Djeevan, I noticed that because of the change in technology and the rapid pace of it, that especially you mentioned also societal structures are changing. At the moment, we are controlled by countries, and the countries decide what to do in the world. But in both your stories, you told us that the cities actually are becoming more and more the operational units in which things are happening. And that's my cup of tea, of course, working for a city. But I think that is very interesting because you, in the Rio story, the Rio de Janeiro was taking action, and I didn't hear the word Brazil in it. Same here a little bit. I think that at the moment cities are taking leadership, especially when it comes to climate change adaptation. But also in your story, you told us that people and cities are more and more the units where it's going to happen.
Yes, I do believe so. I do believe that there will. Oh, sorry. I do believe.
Yeah, maybe to take. Who believes that too? This is an interesting topic. We talk about cities. Are cities going to lead the world? Who has an opinion on that? And does that also mean that cities will have their own organizational structures to deal with floods, for instance? We think now in terms of a Delta program in the Netherlands, or the Army Corps of Engineers in the US, or other national or regional structures like water boards. Who thinks that cities are going to take their own future in their own hands and also organize a topic like flood control? Mr. Hansje Brinker.
No.
Oh no, sorry. Oh, Alert Solution, the other one. But a good friend of Hansje.
I think I can agree with that trend. I think if you look at economic zones, they're already more city organized and country organized. I think then taking care of the rest of your operations and the well-being of that economic zone, that living zone, comes down to what is the most natural unit to organize that in. But you do need some mass to be able to afford such a system. And I think cities will be able to organize that for their citizens. Rural areas will have a harder time to do that.
When we talk about cities, we talk about the big cities.
Yeah.
Just to give you one figure, it is expected that the growth of the national products worldwide, income, 60% will come out of 600 cities in the next decades. So 600 cities will rule more than half of our world economy.
I think you see the same with healthcare. You get the most advanced healthcare there where the money is being generated and people can afford to take care of themselves. So I think that will be concentrated in the cities. I do have a question to a city authority on how to deal with this information, because one interesting part of Djeevan's story was, okay, you share the information immediately and thereby get fast response. I think there's a key in emergency management in sharing that information quickly. But I think city authorities are also hesitant in sharing that information, fearing that there will be an unstructured response to emergency, creating chaos. How do you feel about that?
And then we'll have our first movie in between.
Difficult question. Yes, I'm with John together working for the city of Rotterdam. Not really a mega city. We are a small village compared to the 600 mega cities you mentioned. To be honest, I think we are working for the Office for Sustainability, and all the knowledge we develop and gather we share. It's open, an open process. But still, there are a lot of pieces of knowledge and data information systems.
Good afternoon, conference, and welcome to
dealing about, for example, safety, about the safety of the city, and that's a new area where you enter talking about transparency and about sharing. The interesting thing is, a few years ago we sat on the table with IBM, and I truly believe that within a few years we will sit again behind the table, because it is the future, the combination of data, information, etc., and a kind of an operational center for the city where you can combine all these things. But the difficulty, I think, for a city like Rotterdam, we already have several different institutes, and they already have their operational data systems, and the challenge is to get them work together and to share. An interesting question I came up in my mind is, when you look at a city like, for example, Jakarta or Ho Chi Minh, what would be the advice to a city like that? Where to start? Because they are in another phase of their development. That's yeah. Okay.
After we have listened to them, so that's a good question. I think how to translate this to mega cities like Jakarta. Maybe for just to have a little in between, we have three nice little movies. Let's have a look at one. This is Alex Nixon. He is the climate adaptation advisor to the mayor for the city of London.